I came home expecting a quiet night. Instead, I walked straight into an ambush. My wife, the woman I trusted most, had betrayed me. But she didn't just cheat. She sold me out to an arms dealer who wanted me dead. They thought I wouldn't survive. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. Now I'm not just looking for answers, I'm out for revenge. And I won't stop until they've lost everything. The holiday crowd moved around him, unaware of the storm raging inside. Lucas Hale stood near a sleek marble pillar in the center of the shopping mall, carefully observing the sea of shoppers. People were lost in their own worlds, rushing between stores, sipping flavored lattes, and scrolling through endless streams of messages. They had no idea that, only hours ago, someone had tried to kill him. The weight of his concealed firearm pressed reassuringly against his ribs, a stark contrast to the past few weeks he had spent in Singapore, where carrying a weapon had been impossible. He had relied solely on instincts and close combat training, sharpening his awareness to a level few could comprehend. That awareness had kept him alive today. Navigating through the bustling corridors, Lucas found an open table in the food court. A discarded soda cup sat in front of him, an unintentional prop to make him blend into the background. He needed a place to think, to process the information that had just shattered his life. His pulse remained steady, his face unreadable, but beneath the surface, something burned, an icy, controlled rage. Hours earlier, the betrayal had unfolded in a way he never could have expected. His wife, Evelyn, had spent years by his side, standing beside him through his transition from an elite military operative to a top-tier cybersecurity expert. Their life had been built on trust, or so he had believed. But trust had been a carefully constructed illusion. A coded message intercepted from an encrypted network had revealed the truth. Evelyn wasn't just having an affair. She was involved with Anton Leclerc, a known arms dealer operating under multiple aliases. The evidence had been irrefutable: financial transactions, secret meetings, and the worst of it, files containing classified information that only someone with Lucas's security clearance could access. The realization had been swift, brutal. The woman he had once protected had been selling his intelligence to the highest bidder. But betrayal alone hadn't been enough for them. They had wanted him gone. Permanently. The ambush had come fast. He had returned home earlier than planned, only to find himself under fire the moment he stepped onto his own property. The two men waiting for him weren't amateurs, but they had underestimated their target. Lucas had moved faster, striking hard, neutralizing one and severely injuring the other. The firefight had lasted less than a minute, but its implications were irreversible. His home was compromised. His life, as he had known it, was over. Now, sitting in the food court, he tapped his fingers lightly against the table, staring at the disposable phone he had purchased moments ago. Cash only, no digital footprint. The clerk who had sold it to him had been suspicious of the urgency, but money had done the talking. The phone vibrated in his palm, a text from an unknown number. No words, just a link. Lucas hesitated for less than a second before pressing it. The screen flashed, then displayed a loading bar. Downloading application. Seconds later, an icon appeared, an emblem of an angular, stylized falcon. He tapped it. The call connected instantly, though the voice on the other end sounded distorted, filtered through a scrambler. Hold the phone at arm's length and look into the screen. The instruction was clear. Lucas complied. The front camera activated, snapping a quick image. He barely recognized himself, pale complexion, tension in his jaw, exhaustion in his eyes. Name, the voice demanded. Lucas Hale. A brief pause. The kind that suggested background checks were already running. Operational status. Armed. Uninjured. In need of immediate assistance. Another pause. What is the nature of your situation? My wife is working with an arms dealer. They attempted to eliminate me. I need to neutralize the threat. The line went silent. For a moment, only faint instrumental music played, absurdly out of place. Then, the voice returned. A field asset is available in your area. Move to the south exit of the mall and wait near the service corridor. Lucas tensed. He needed support, but waiting 30 minutes in an exposed location was risky. His enemies weren't incompetent. They could be closing in. I may not have 30 minutes. The contractor will arrange for extraction if the situation escalates. The line cut off. Pocketing the phone, Lucas stood, blending into the ebb and flow of holiday shoppers. He adjusted his posture, forcing himself to appear casual as he weaved through the crowd, every movement calculated. Each passing stranger was a potential threat. The south exit was nearly a quarter-mile away, and he stayed along the edges of the crowds, careful not to attract unnecessary attention. The journey took longer than expected, every instinct screaming at him to stay alert. He was close, just a few steps away from the designated meeting point, when a firm grip seized his right elbow. A couple herding their children bustled past, laughing and arguing over who had the car keys. To anyone watching, Lucas appeared to be just another man in a busy mall, engaged in a casual conversation. But he knew better. Keep walking, a voice murmured barely above a whisper. The accent was subtle, Eastern European. Maybe Russian. Maybe something else. The man beside him wore a sharp black coat, blending seamlessly into the affluent holiday crowd. Lucas didn't need to look to know there was a concealed weapon aimed at him. He recognized the voice. He had heard it during the ambush outside his house. The man didn't wait for a response. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Lucas exhaled slowly, calculating. The odds weren't in his favor. Not here. Too many civilians. Too many variables. As they passed a teenage girl standing near a kiosk, absorbed in her phone, Lucas noted the faintest flicker of movement from the corner of his eye. She was small, wiry, wearing a dark jacket and a knit cap. Nothing unusual, except for the slight shift in her stance, the deliberate way her weight adjusted. She wasn't just another shopper. A heartbeat later, a dull, heavy thud echoed through the corridor. The man holding Lucas stumbled forward, his body suddenly limp. He collapsed in a heap, revealing the girl standing behind him, a large metal wrench still raised in her hands. Her expression remained impassive as she crouched, checking his breathing with mechanical efficiency. She moved fast, clearing his weapon, removing his wallet, and securing his phone in a metallic envelope. The entire sequence took mere seconds. Then, she stood, extending a hand. Come with me if you want to live. Lucas stared at her, caught between shock and calculation. A slow smirk crossed her lips. I've always wanted to say that. He exhaled, nodding. No time for hesitation. Whatever this was, it was his best option. As they moved toward the exit, the only thing on Lucas's mind was revenge. The cold air outside the mall carried the distant hum of traffic and the faint scent of roasted chestnuts from a nearby street vendor. Lucas Hale followed the girl in the knit cap without a word, his steps measured, his mind calculating every possible outcome. Whoever she was, she had just saved his life, and in his world, that was never an accident. They weaved through the parking structure, moving between rows of vehicles, avoiding cameras and open spaces. The girl's movements were practiced, controlled. She had done this before. Lucas observed her closely, committing every detail to memory. Small, lean frame. Dark hair tucked beneath the cap. She carried herself like someone who had been trained, yet there was an ease to her actions that suggested experience rather than rigid discipline. She stopped beside an unassuming sedan, dark blue, no identifying marks, the kind of car that would blend anywhere. Unlocking the doors with a single press of her key fob, she motioned for him to get in. Lucas hesitated for only a second before sliding into the passenger seat. The moment the doors shut, she pulled out a compact device, a signal jammer, and activated it before placing her phone inside a protective case. A precaution. Smart. Only then did she turn to face him. Name's Delaney. She spoke without emotion, her focus on starting the engine and pulling out of the lot with smooth precision. Lucas remained silent, studying her profile. The way she gripped the wheel, The way her gaze flicked to the rearview mirror at precise intervals, she wasn't just a courier or low-level operative. "You're K2," he finally said, voice calm but firm. A hint of a smirk ghosted across her lips. "You catch on fast." So, the voice on the phone had been real. K2 Executive Services, the kind of organization that operated in the space between government black ops and private intelligence. They took contracts from those who could afford them, sometimes as protectors, sometimes as enforcers. That meant Lucas's situation had escalated beyond a simple contract hit. Someone wanted him eliminated efficiently, without loose ends. Delaney maneuvered the car through city streets, taking indirect routes, doubling back, ensuring they weren't being followed. Only after she was satisfied did she finally speak again. "You said your wife tried to kill you." Lucas exhaled, staring at the neon-lit skyline ahead. "Evelyn was more than just unfaithful. She was selling classified intelligence to Anton Leclerc." He felt, rather than saw, Delaney's posture shift. A pause. Then, "Leclerc's a major player. Which is why they couldn't afford to leave me breathing." For a while, the only sound was the hum of the tires on wet asphalt. Lucas knew the weight of what he had just revealed. Leclerc wasn't just an arms dealer, he was a facilitator of chaos, someone whose network extended across governments, insurgencies, and corporate war zones. If Evelyn had been working with him, the breach was deeper than he had initially thought. Delaney took a sharp turn, exiting the main road and heading toward an industrial area on the outskirts of the city. A warehouse loomed in the distance, surrounded by rusting shipping containers. She pulled the car into a side alley, killed the lights, and let the engine idle. Lucas tensed slightly. "Why here?" She tapped her fingers against the steering wheel, considering her words. "K2 doesn't operate without a contract. The fact that you got a response means someone with influence wants you alive." She turned to face him fully. "But survival isn't free." Lucas knew what she meant. Protection came with conditions. "What's the price?" A slow inhale. "We need Leclerc gone. You want revenge. We want results. That puts us on the same side." He leaned back against the seat, absorbing the weight of her words. Taking down Leclerc wasn't just about vengeance. It was about dismantling a network that thrived on secrecy. Lucas had spent years in intelligence, tracking people like him, but now he wasn't just an observer. He was a target. His fingers tightened into a fist. "I have proof," he said. "A hidden office. Hard drives. Every transaction Evelyn made, every file she sold." Delaney nodded, her expression unreadable. "Then that's our next stop." Lucas studied her once more, measuring trust against necessity. For now, their goals aligned. And that was enough. The city lights blurred past as Delaney maneuvered the car through backroads, avoiding major intersections and known surveillance hotspots. Lucas Hales sat in the passenger seat, his mind sifting through years of training and every contingency he had ever planned. His world had shifted overnight, but there was no room for hesitation. His wife, Evelyn, had betrayed him, not just as a husband but as an operative. She had handed classified information to Anton Leclerc, an arms dealer with enough reach to destabilize entire regions. Now, she was likely scrambling, covering her tracks, unaware that Lucas was still breathing. The drive was silent except for the steady hum of the tires. Delaney was efficient, deliberate, no wasted motion, no unnecessary words. Lucas respected that. He had worked with intelligence operatives before, and she carried the same controlled energy, someone who operated on facts and precision, not emotion. Finally she spoke. "This hidden office of yours. How secure?" Lucas exhaled slowly, keeping his gaze on the darkened streets. "Completely off-grid. No connection to my personal accounts. It was meant to be a fail-safe in case of compromise." He flexed his fingers, feeling the weight of the situation. "Turns out I needed it sooner than expected." Delaney nodded, taking an abrupt left turn onto a smaller road, shielded by overgrown trees. "And Evelyn? What's your read on her next move?" She'll try to disappear, Lucas answered without hesitation. But not before cleaning up loose ends. If she thinks I'm still alive, she'll assume I'm coming for her. And she'd be right, Delaney murmured, gripping the wheel a little tighter. Lucas didn't respond. His emotions were buried under years of discipline, but the cold certainty in his chest burned brighter with every passing mile. As they neared the outskirts of town, the skyline gave way to sprawling estates and heavily secured homes. Lucas's hidden office was disguised as an unassuming property, a small, two-story house nestled in a quiet, upper-class neighborhood. He had designed it himself, ensuring that if he ever needed to disappear, he could do so without a trace. Delaney parked a block away, cutting the engine. Lucas scanned the area, instincts kicking in. Too quiet. Delaney followed his gaze. The streetlights cast long, motionless shadows. No signs of life. No passing cars. The house itself looked untouched, but Lucas knew better. He could feel it. Something wasn't right. They exited the vehicle, moving with practiced ease. Lucas led the way, his hand hovering over his concealed weapon as they approached the house's side entrance. A small keypad was embedded near the doorframe. He entered a code, waited for the biometric scanner to confirm his identity, then pushed the door open. The moment they stepped inside, he knew. Someone had been here. The space was immaculate, as if untouched, but the subtle details told another story. A chair slightly misaligned. A faint scuff mark near the desk. The scent of cigarette smoke lingering in the air. Someone had searched the place, but they hadn't found everything. Delaney moved to secure the perimeter while Lucas made his way to the study. The third bookshelf on the left held the key. He reached for a worn copy of War and Peace, tilting it slightly. A barely audible click sounded, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a steel safe. He entered another code, and the door released with a quiet hiss. Inside, neatly stacked hard drives gleamed under the dim light. Evidence. Transactions. Encrypted files detailing Evelyn's involvement with Leclerc. Everything he needed to dismantle their operation. Delaney reappeared at the doorway. We need to move. We're not alone. Lucas turned, securing the drives in his pack. How many? 2 watching from the east side. Could be more nearby. He exhaled, adrenaline steadying his nerves. Then we don't have much time. With deliberate movements, they exited through the back, slipping into the shadows before their observers could react. This wasn't over. Evelyn had made her move. Now it was his turn. The encrypted message arrived at dawn, a single line of text, coordinates leading to an isolated island off the Mediterranean coast. Anton Leclerc wasn't hiding. He was conducting business as usual, confident that no one could touch him. That confidence would be his downfall. Lucas Hales sat in the dimly lit briefing room, surrounded by a team of operatives who had been carefully assembled for one purpose: taking down Leclerc's operation in a single strike. Delaney stood across from him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable as the mission details were finalized. Surveillance footage confirmed that the compound was heavily fortified. Guards patrolled the perimeter in tight rotations. Advanced security systems controlled every entry point. And at the center of it all, Leclerc himself, overseeing a weapons deal that would solidify his influence in the underworld. Lucas studied the satellite images, committing the layout to memory. We move at night, he said finally, his voice calm, precise. Silent entry. No unnecessary engagements. We secure the intel, neutralize key targets, and extract. Delaney nodded. And Evelyn? Lucas exhaled, fingers tightening into fists. He had no doubts about what she had done, but a part of him still struggled to reconcile the woman he had loved with the traitor she had become. If she's there, we take her alive. I want answers. No one argued. As night fell, the team deployed from a stealth vessel stationed miles offshore. The approach was executed with surgical precision, small submersibles carrying them beneath the island's radar detection. Lucas emerged from the water first, his gear heavy but familiar. The jungle beyond the shoreline provided cover as they advanced. Bravo team took up sniper positions on the ridge, covering entry points and eliminating sentries with silent precision. Lucas and Delaney moved with Alpha team, breaching the compound through a hidden maintenance tunnel. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The deal was already in motion, buyers seated around a long table, crates of weaponry lined against the walls. At the far end of the room, Leclerc stood, speaking in low, calculated tones. Lucas signaled the team. They moved as one. The first explosion was small, just enough to create chaos. Lights flickered. Security scrambled. Lucas advanced, weaving between cover, his weapon raised. A guard turned, too slow. A single shot dropped him before he could sound the alarm. Delaney took position near the servers, extracting critical files while Lucas pushed toward Leclerc. The arms dealer reacted fast, his instincts sharp. He reached for a weapon, but Lucas was already there, knocking him to the ground with a brutal strike. "You should be dead," Leclerc spat, eyes burning with defiance. Lucas pressed the barrel of his weapon against the man's temple. "You first." Before he could pull the trigger, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Lucas, stop!" He turned. Evelyn. Standing in the doorway, eyes wide, a gun in her trembling hands. For a moment, everything else faded. Lucas had imagined this confrontation 1,000 times, but now, faced with her betrayal in the flesh, the weight of it settled deep in his chest. She took a step closer, desperation flickering across her face. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," he interrupted, his voice like ice. "You sold me out. You sold out everything we stood for." Guards stormed in, weapons raised, but Bravo team cut them down with ruthless efficiency. Delaney's voice crackled through the comms. "We need to go. Now." Lucas exhaled sharply, his grip tightening. Evelyn knew it was over. He didn't give her a choice. A single, precise strike disarmed her. Before she could react, he wrenched her hands behind her back, securing the cuffs with cold efficiency. The mission was complete. As the extraction team secured Leclerc and his remaining men, Lucas stood amidst the wreckage of his past. Evelyn had made her choices. Now, she would face the consequences. The mission had been a success. Anton Leclerc was in custody, his network dismantled, his empire reduced to smoldering ruins. The stolen intelligence had been recovered, and those who had enabled his rise were either dead or imprisoned. Yet, as Lucas Hales sat in the cold, windowless interrogation room, he felt no satisfaction. Across from him, Evelyn sat shackled to the steel table, her once pristine composure shattered. Her hair was disheveled, dark circles hollowed her eyes, and the confidence she had once carried had been replaced by something else, fear, regret, or perhaps just the realization that she had lost everything. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Lucas had envisioned this confrontation many times. The betrayal. The lies. The moment he would finally get to look her in the eyes and ask why. But now that she was here, bound and powerless, the question didn't matter anymore. She broke the silence first. "I never wanted it to end like this." Lucas exhaled, fingers drumming against the table. "But it did." His voice was devoid of emotion. He had wasted enough time trying to understand. He didn't need her justification. She swallowed hard, as if searching for the right words. "Leclerc promised me a way out. Power. A life beyond just being the wife of a man who always put duty first." Her lips pressed together. "I thought I was making the right choice." Lucas studied her, the weight of her words settling in. He could have argued, told her how misguided she was, how blind she had been to the consequences of her actions. But it didn't matter. The choices had already been made. He leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Was it worth it?" A flicker of pain crossed her face. She had no answer. A knock at the door interrupted the silence. Delaney stepped in, arms crossed. "It's time." Lucas stood, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. He took one last look at Evelyn, the woman he had once trusted, the woman who had tried to destroy him. Whatever they had once been to each other no longer existed. He turned away without another word. Outside, the world moved on. The days that followed were filled with debriefings, intelligence reports, and legal proceedings. Evelyn was handed over to authorities, her fate sealed in classified documents and courtroom negotiations. Lucas ensured she received no mercy, no plea deals, no escape routes. She had chosen her side, and now she would face the consequences. With Leclerc's empire dismantled, the intelligence community scrambled to fill the power vacuum. Lucas, however, had no interest in the political aftermath. He had done his part. The mission was over. Or so he thought. One evening, as he packed the last of his belongings into a black duffel bag, his encrypted phone buzzed. A familiar number. He answered without hesitation. "Hail," the voice on the other end greeted. It was his handler, an old contact from his days in special operations. "We've got something brewing in Buenos Aires. Bigger than Leclerc. We need someone who understands the stakes." Lucas glanced at the city skyline beyond his window. The weight of the past weeks threatened to settle in, but he refused to let it take hold. "Send me the details." A brief pause. Then, "Wheels up in 6 hours." The line went dead. Lucas secured the bag, slung it over his shoulder, and exhaled slowly. The past was behind him. The mission was all that remained. And he was ready for whatever came next.